podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Just how fast is Xfinity Internet? Well, it's beyond gig speed fast, so you feel like you're in the game. It can also connect hundreds of devices at once, which is powerful enough to power hundreds of U's.
He's not kidding.
No, I'm actually not. Unbeatable internet only from Xfinity. Made to do anything, so you can do anything.
Restrictions apply. Actual speeds vary and not guaranteed. Requires compatible Xfinity Gateway. Limited quantities available.
Welcome to another Love Tennis Podlet. It's day, I don't know what day it is. I barely know what day of the week it is. You may be aware that this is coming to you a little bit late, for which I apologise. It's, as you know, we've had a few technical issues this week, and I suppose this is another one. As such, the women's semi-finals will either be in play or finished by the time you hear this, so I'm not going to talk about Swiatek versus Kasatkina and Trevisan versus Goff too much, because they will be dated by the time you hear this. What I do want to talk about is what happened on Wednesday at Roland Garros, and a little bit about something I wrote for the newspaper about Roland Garros as a whole yesterday, which caused quite a lot of consternation and debate, which is the whole point, really. Let's start with the tennis, I suppose. As I mentioned, Daria Kasatkina and Iga Swiatek both through to the semi-finals. Kasatkina beat Kudermetova. She outlasted her, really. Just kind of stuck with it. And I mean, Kudermetova had a medical timeout as well and some treatment, so that certainly played in her favour, but I didn't think she particularly went away. The second set was an hour and 20 minutes. It was pretty... I mean, I don't think tight is the word. It was hard work, though. I think there were in total 6 breaks of serve in the set. Daria Kasatkina then took a 6-1 lead in the tiebreak. She lost 5 match points in a row and then broke against Kudermetova's serve at 5-6 to seal the match. It was a pretty emotional moment. She's obviously someone who has been at this stage before. She's obviously also someone who, as a Russian player at the moment, has a lot to deal with, and I'm sure a lot of things going through her head and a lot of questions being aimed at her. So I think every victory that she claims probably feels like a victory against the world. She obviously made those 2 quarterfinals previously in 2018, one here and one at Wimbledon, and she lost both of those. So a big moment for her. Not the only first-time French Open semi-finalist. Of course, there are a couple across the draw. The other women's match was Iga Swiatek against Jessica Pegula. This was, on paper, the biggest challenge of her tournament so far. I would probably suggest that it turned out that way as well. I don't think she's been playing her best the last match or two. Zheng, the Chinese player, certainly challenged her, and I think potentially might have won had she not, had what we thought was an injury. She later revealed she was struggling with period pains, which is an injury of sorts. I don't really know how to categorise that. I don't know whether calling it an injury would be right or wrong, given that, most women go through it every month to a lesser or greater extent. I don't know. Anyway, on the other side of the net, Swiatek didn't play very well in that match. When she played Danka Kovanic, there were definitely sort of chinks in the armour. And I think Jessica Pegula might view this as a little bit of a missed opportunity. But she might particularly be annoyed that at 3-3 in the first set, she was break point down. She played a decent backhand drop shot, and it bounced twice, quite simply. I don't think Swiatek noticed. She was asked about it afterwards. She said, "I'm sorry if it did." Bounced twice. The umpire certainly didn't notice. She said she was just trying to get the ball and she did her best, and the umpire said game and she moved on, and that she didn't realise it had bounced twice. I think if she had, she would have said something, but she didn't realise and she didn't say anything. Pegula kind of looked back at her box and looked at the chair, and he didn't say anything. And Pegula said, I didn't think she got it. I was just like, Jesus, is she that fast? I hit that perfect, and it was a very good drop shot. I looked at the chair and he was like, he didn't call it. You can't say anything. The problem is once they make the decision, you can't go back and change it. So, yeah. And then she said the replay came up, and it was pretty obviously a double bounce, and he said he didn't see it. So, in Jessica Pegula's words, what are you going to do? You can't go back in time and change the call, which, I think is a really mature attitude, by the way. Plenty of players would have sat there and just moaned and had a massive fit at the umpire, and, I don't know, maybe it would spur some players on, but I don't think it, it was an unfortunate situation, Pegula's words, and I think that's probably the best way of summing it up. I don't think there was any deliberate foul play on either part. It gave Swiatek the lead in the match, though, but she had been broken in her first service game, and, Pegula had pushed her occasionally, but once she got into her rhythm, especially on return, she really, really stepped it up. But Pegula fought hard. She saved, I think, 3 match points in the final game of the second set. It lasted an hour and a half, and frankly, given Swiatek's 33 game unbeaten streak now, getting close to her is a bit of an achievement. So you have to give her some credit for that. We then had the men's, of course, Andrei Rublev and Marin Cilic, 2 men who've never been previously to a French Open semi-final. Andrei Rublev, of course, has been to a lot of Grand Slam quarterfinals, and Marin Cilic has been to the semi-finals of all the others, and now he's been to all of them. Incredibly, he's only the 5th active player to reach the semi-finals of all 4 Grand Slams. The other 4, Murray, Djokovic, Nadal and Federer. I mean, if that doesn't tell you the kind of career that Marin Cilic has had, and, lots of people don't like watching him, lots of people think he's a bit of a boring bloke, but, as George said, he's a very nice guy, and he has worked blooming hard at his career. I think anyone who watched the 2017 Wimbledon final, where he broke down in tears on court because his blisters were so bad that he could barely really play, that was really hard to watch. He's obviously a Grand Slam champion. He won the US Open in 2014, and he also got to the final of the Australian Open in 2018. Both of those finals he lost to Roger Federer. So it's not like, which is no shame, let's be honest, on grass or hard court. So, he has certainly had his 60 seconds fill of minute run. And he's not done yet. He's 33 years old. He blew Medvedev away. He did a decent job against Rublev as well. I mean, it went to 5 sets. He got pretty tight in that 5th set. He had a match point on Rublev's serve. But in the tiebreak, Cilic is a guy we kind of associate with getting quite tight. The tiebreak, he walked. I mean, Rublev was nearly in tears. 10-2 was the tiebreak in the 5th set. That is the ultimate pressure, that champion's tiebreak at the end of the 5th set. After 4 hours of tennis, you've got to go out and play high-pressure points. Cilic absolutely blew him away. It was 2-2. 8 points later, it was 10-2. I think he's going to be a real handful in the latter rounds now. He's 2 wins away from the title, and I just wouldn't rule it out. The man he's going to play in the semi-final is Casper Ruud of Norway. Big breakthrough result for him. He beat Holger Rune in 4 sets in the night match. More on night matches in a minute. It was a pretty tight battle. It was hard fought. Holger Rune is a character on the court. He went a set down. Ruud not blew him away, but definitely played better than him, quite frankly, in the first set. Won the first 5 games on the run, and you just wondered, a little bit like we saw Carlos Alcaraz looking a bit lost on the court. You wondered whether this was going to be a step too far for the 19-year-old as well. But, he kind of, he bit hard, bit down. He was a set and a break down at one point, and he immediately broke back. He broke again 3 games later, and he won the set, to love in that 10th game of the second set. So he pulled it back, and he put himself back on level terms. And, the 3rd set tiebreak, Ruud played really well. And just the unforced errors caught up with Rune, really. Whereas the other night when he beat Tsitsipas, everything was landing. Things weren't landing in the same way. And, I think he plays that kind of strategy. So, he's a guy who's exciting to watch because of it. Expect it to be good to watch. Expect to see lots more of him. This time last year, he was floating around 300 in the world or something. He's going to be inside the top 40 for the first time. when the rankings shake down on Monday, if not higher. I'll just tell you exactly where he's going to be. He's going to be 28 in the world on Monday, which is a big achievement for a 19-year-old. There's only 2 of them really in the top. I think there's only 2 teenagers in the top 150. Yeah, exactly. The 3rd ranked teenager is Luca Nardi, and he's 198 in the world. So that tells you kind of everything you need to know about how hard it is to break through under the age of 20 in the men's game. We'll see a lot more of him. But great result for Casper Ruud. There was a bit of controversy afterwards, or alleged controversy. Extra Bladet, I think they're Norwegian, or they're certainly Scandinavian, reporting that Holger Rune said in the locker room, he, Casper, and his team have to pass me. The team is actually very sweet, and then he just goes straight up to me and shouts, "Ya!" in my face. Casper Ruud's dad has since come out and said this is complete nonsense. It didn't happen. It's locker room, he said, she said. There was a moment at the net. I mean, the final point of the match was a contested mark. Rune wasn't happy with the umpire when she came down and looked at it and said it was good. He went up to the net and just, the handshake was very cursory, slapped his hand and walked to his chair, and Ruud just made a face, a little sort of subtle shake of the head and a sort of, right, okay, that's how it is it? So clearly there was a bit of needle, but I'm all for needle. There's needle between Nadal and Djokovic, and there was the other day, and I'm all for that. I think it makes for great tennis, and as long as it doesn't overstep the mark, which I don't think... I mean, potentially going up to someone in the locker room and shouting in their face does, but, who knows if that happened or not. But I would suggest that on court, a little bit of needle goes a long way. It was a night match. It was the last night match. We're now into fully day tennis, albeit late afternoon and early evening tennis, because everything starts about 3 o'clock here in Paris. The night matches have been met with mixed results. This is the first time they've had full crowds at the night matches. Of course, in 2020, no crowds. 2021, limited crowds. From a practical standpoint, it's pretty cold. It was about 10 degrees when Nadal Djokovic finished. Everyone was wearing blankets. Some people couldn't stick it out. It wasn't great from that perspective. It finishes too late because it starts too late. They kick off not before 8:45, and invariably play starts at 9. Even a straight set match, a men's match anyway, will go 2 hours, and that's an 11 o'clock finish, which isn't too bad. But if it goes long, like Nadal Djokovic did, the last metro leaves at 20 to 1 from around there, and that match finished at 1:15. And it was not the only post 1 a.m. finish, and it wasn't even the latest finish ever in these night sessions, because back in 2020, I think Sinner and Nadal went to 1:30. So clearly that's an issue. It was staggering that Amelie Mauresmo said they hadn't even really thought about the transport, they didn't have a plan, and that they would definitely be looking at it. I mean, surely that's like one of the first things you look at when you're arranging an event. One of the other first things you look at when you're arranging an event should be equality. And you would think with a female tournament director at the French Open, which is, rare to say the least, that would be a greater concern. Of the night matches, 9 of them were men's matches, 1 of them was a women's match. In my tweet about this, I said, is it sexist? I don't know. And I had lots of people, including Catherine Whitaker of the Tennis Podcast, say, I'll help. Yes, it is. I find it difficult to kind of level these big labels at tournaments or people, because I often think that they are informed by some prejudices, but I think that sometimes, there's some shades of grey. I don't doubt that there is sexism involved in the way this has been scheduled. There are other things as well. Mauresmo said, she said every day, or at least most days, I looked at the women's matches and thought, can I get any of these on Chatrier in the night session? She said she was looking for rivalries or stars. And she said that she could only find one, and that was Alizé Cornet, the French player, up against former champion Jelena Ostapenko. It was a great match, 3 sets, ding-dong. Ostapenko is an entertainer at the best of times. It was ideal. And Naomi Osaka was in this tournament. All right, not for very long, but could have put her first or second round match. She played Amanda Anisimova. That's a great matchup. Can you not put that on? I appreciate that there's Japanese broadcasters wanting it on at 11 in the morning so they can get it in prime time in Japan. But, this isn't just about TV audiences, although it is in part. It's also about what message you're sending to the world about what Roland Garros thinks of players. And they've really pushed this night match. They have a DJ on before. It's the big ticket. They're selling it as a separate ticket. You can't get in till 6:30. It's supposed to be the kind of post-work crowd. It's got shades of T20 in terms of the marketing. And they think that the women's game, in the words of Maresmo, lacks appeal. I mean, I don't disagree that the women's game has less appeal at the moment than the men's game, because, Nadal and Djokovic and Federer when he's fit are three of the best players of all time. And I don't know how many of the best all-time players are currently playing in the women's tour. I'd say Swiatek might end up in that kind of echelon, and I think Osaka might, and maybe one or two others, but, they don't have GOATs. But they do have star quality, and I think it's a really important message to send to fans of the sport and to kids to be like, look, here's a woman standing on the same stage as a man. And I think when you end up with 9 men's matches and 1 women's match, it doesn't send that message. Now, my concern is that I don't think Maresmo regrets that. I think she thinks they did the right thing and that they wouldn't change it if they had their time again. Which I think is a bit troubling. At least, even if she thinks that, it's blooming naive to say it. How can she not see that that's going to make serious headlines if you say, nah, I don't think it's worth having the women on in prime time? It baffles, really. You would think that someone somewhere in the FFT is going, Amelie, we can't say this, even if we think it. Here's the line. I don't like spin and PR. I like honesty, but sometimes honesty gets you in trouble, I'm afraid. And I think in this case, Maresmo speaking her mind may have got her in trouble. I don't know if night matches will survive. Amazon have a contract for another year to show them, and that's really why it's such a big deal. Amazon pay a lot of money for the rights to those night matches. I think that the start time will change. Châtelet starts an hour later than every other court, and I have no idea why. That should start at 11. That would mean you can pull the night session back at least an hour. So it's a 7:45 for 8 o'clock start in Paris. Because then even a really long match, 4 hours, would go to midnight. And that wouldn't be great, but you might only get 1 or 2 4-hour matches over the kind of whole fortnight. I think the better thing would to be, have Châtelet 11 till 6, and then kick everyone out, bring everyone back in, start at 6:30, have a women's match and a men's match on. And then I think you avoid all the equality problems or the equality complaints. You give the women the platform that I think they deserve. And, if you started at 6:30, you might get a long women's match that goes 3 hours occasionally, and men don't go on until 9:30. But there are some tournaments that put men at, Madrid. Zverev didn't start till God knows what time. I remember Dimitrov starting a night match potentially in Australia at about 1:45 to midnight. And again, that's bad. But what I'm saying is, you should, and realistically, most women's matches kind of work out to the hour and a half, 2 hour mark. So you start at 6:30, probably finish by 8:30, and then you get on and you get going. All a bit of a mess, really. And, Maresmo was sick of talking about scheduling by the end of her press conference, but that is a big deal, and it's something that really gets people talking. Please do head over to inews.co.uk/sport/tennis if you want to read that, or head over to my Twitter, and you can read it there as well. Please do keep coming back. We'll have another podcast tonight after the women's semi-finals, looking ahead to the men's semi-finals and back on the women's semis. Hopefully we'll have one of the lads as well. And most of all, thank you very much for listening. It has actually kept me sane doing these pods.
Sports Social Podcast Network.